At the beginning of the 20th century, film not only just came to Singapore, it was something that became exciting or relevant to people's lives across the world. So a lot of the films that came at the start of the 20th century to Singapore, they arrived from Europe or the Americas. And right at the start, the Shaw brothers came from China to Singapore, and they started a film company here. And then they were followed by the Cathay organization in the 1930s. So as early as the late 1930s, the Shaw brothers have already started investing on film production. Okay, and this has got a lot of implications to the kind of things that we watch and that define the sort of film that came out from Singapore. When we go through the several decades to the end of the Second World War after 1945, we have what was known as the golden age of cinema in Singapore. And why this was the case was because, interestingly enough, there were a lot of films, Malay films, that was made in Singapore, as well as in the region, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. And at the same time, there was a lot of feedback and influence from places like the Philippines, like India, okay, and so on. And these films that were made, they became very popular, not just in Singapore itself. They became regionally popular and exciting, and people actually wanted to watch them. And one of those films or genres that people were very interested in catching was the Pontianak films, okay, or what is known as the Malay Ghost story. In this case, the moving picture kind of version, okay. And there were back then 2 studios that sprung up. So based on the companies that came, or the founders that came, Shaw and Cathay, they each created a production house, and these were churning out a lot of movies, specifically the Malay movies, like the Pontianak films. There was also this series of Bond films in Singapore, starring the very handsome Jin Samsudin, and it was also quite a big hit with the locals. There were, of course, your P. Ramlee films, and he was also another big name in the Malay film industry. And here you can see 2 of his most prominent films. The one on the left, Penarik Pecah, and then the other one, Ibu Mertuan Kun. So both, the first film is actually a film that got him started in the genre, in the industry, and the second film was an acclaimed film that got him a Best Artist award. So after this series of film burgeoning and people watching movies in Singapore, there was actually a fall in the films that were produced in Singapore. Film watching was not something that people stopped doing. Right? You must be mindful of that distinction. So there was a lot of let's go to the movies, let's go and catch a film. It was still ongoing, but people were not making as many movies as they used to. And this was the period that started in the 1960s and then went all the way down 1970s. And very gradually, Shaw, Cathay, they started to focus on distribution and exhibition of films. And at the same time, there was competition from the region, from Indonesia, and especially from Hong Kong. And back in those days, in the 1970s, you had a lot of Kung Fu movies coming from Hong Kong, and those became the rage. here in Singapore as well as elsewhere in the Southeast Asian region. Okay, of course you would have Bruce Lee, who made 3 very good films and then suddenly passed away. And then following him, there was Jackie Chan in the 1980s. Okay, and then he continued the Kung Fu fever. So because of that, things kind of tapered, and by the time it was the 1980s, there was this general sentiment that film in Singapore was non-existent, as in filmmaking, right? People were not making films anymore, as people tended to say. But at the same time, in the same year, the SIFF was started by some film buffs, and because of the Singapore International Film Fest, it actually kick-started a series of events and I suppose you can call them sentiments related to film, and that got a lot of younger aspiring directors thinking about making films, never mind if it's just budget films or very short films. So they saw the SIFF as an opportunity for them to showcase whatever talent they had, and because of that they were again encouraged into making movies, and this gave us a new wave in our local film scene. Okay, so arguably from the 1990s onwards, we see a series of productions and films that came in to expose us to a new period of filmmaking as well as film viewing. And these filmmakers, they came from all walks of life. Some were very rich, some didn't have money, and they had the same goal in mind. They wanted to make movies, okay, and they wanted to make movies that people can appreciate. And these movies, they tended to veer in a few directions. They would be concerned with things like memory, identity, the kind of spaces that we inhabited, also the use of language, specifically Singlish, as well as marginalized characters. So these were typically the kind of narratives that people were exploring during that time. So moving on from those filmmakers that we talked about, there are other filmmakers from the 1990s to the present day who also started making film, right? And a lot of times you find that they started with short films for very obvious reasons. They wanted to make a film, and perhaps they did not have the budget for it, so making a short film allows them to do that without causing them a lot of money to be given to that project. Okay, and perhaps they also did not have enough people to work with them to make that film, so most of the time they may have to do that on their own or with very little help. So some younger directors that have since became very prominent players in the region and perhaps even in the world. You have Royston Tan, you have Bu Jun Fong, and you have Anthony Chen as well as Kirsten Tan. So some of the themes that keep recurring, at least to me, right, and I group them deliberately in these 3 categories: memory, space, identity as one, and then love, kinship, this idea of the kampong spirit that's very localized in Singapore, maybe Malaysia. And the last one, ostracism, displacement, and this idea of acceptance, just being able to accept that there are many different people around us and we should be accepting towards all of them. So these films explore these themes in various ways. I would say not all the themes are explored. A lot of times they get replayed in different films, but they are also very interestingly done by different people, right? Not just the same filmmaker making similar films, but different filmmakers revisiting the same themes. Now there's something interesting which I discovered, and I would like for you to maybe explore the same, which is that if you think about film, and specifically Singapore film, and you try to find it on YouTube, you will be surprised at what you will discover. Yeah, because nowadays everyone can aspire to be a filmmaker, so long as you have a mobile phone which has a camera function, and you can take photographs, you can take videos with it, you can put together your short film. And then something that's 5 minutes long or even less, you use some program, you splice the slides together, you make a video, you play it with some music, and you have your own story already. And then if you want to show it to the world, you just put it on YouTube, and there you go. You have a film out there. And like we said earlier at the start of the lecture, these films, they are artifacts, and they are historically situated, in a time and a place. And because of that, I see all these films as valuable cultural products, and they become a part of who we are, the kind of country, kind of people that we are. The fact that different generations, we can speak different languages, and yet we all understand what one another is talking about, just like in GPS. I think that is something worth thinking about. I just want to take the opportunity to get you to think a little more about what it means to watch a film, or what defines a film. And in this case, a Singapore film, what can it be? And I want to encourage you to move away from the conventional idea that a film needs to be made by a director who is famous, who has made several films already, and who has made films that are successful. And these films would be shown in cinemas in Singapore and maybe even outside of Singapore. And these films are films that people want to watch. They have a mass appeal, etc., etc. Because you can have those films, and there are these films around, and I believe these films will continue to be produced by whether existing directors or upcoming directors in the future. But I think the idea or the concept of film today is changing, and not saying that it's for the better or worse, but it is necessarily changing, and in a way that we cannot control. And because of YouTube, because of the internet, and because of technologies that allow people to make films, films are actually everywhere, and everyone is a potential filmmaker. And the Singapore film that we should be familiar with is really a film that relates to us in one way or another, and which can be made anytime, anywhere, by anyone.